Hi guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at a power supply from Silverpower, and it's the SP-S850M, and it's an 850 watt unit in their green power range. It's 80 plus bronze rated, and I'll read you what it says down the front. It says 80 plus bronze approved, super high efficiency for energy savings, excellent thermal management with very silent 12 centimeter ball bearing fan. Obviously we're going to be talking about this in a bit. Active power factor correction with high PF value of up to and including, or do you know what I mean, you can see there 0.099. Stable output voltages under any load condition, protection against overvoltage, overpower and short circuit. Now I've had a look around the box and you've got some information on the back, basically saying it's bronze approved, reliability, yada yada yada. It does say that it's got 4x6+2 pin built-in PCI Express graphics card connectors, 10 serial ATA connectors, but it doesn't say anything there about Molex connectors or anything like that, and it doesn't on the manual inside either. So it does tell you about the SATA and the PCI Express, but then it doesn't tell you about how many Molexes that you've got in there. On the back we've got a very basic kind of graph there, and it says that you've got 150 watt over the 3.3 volt and the 5 volt rails, 25 amps each, 70 amps on the 12 volt rail, which is 840 watts, 0.5 amps on the minus 12 volt rail, which is 6 watts, and then 3 amps on the +5 VSB rail, which is another 15 watts. So just some basic kind of ideas there. Now, Silverpower, they always seem to use this gorilla. It just seems to be the way they followed with the themes and stuff. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Inside we've got a manual. Now the manual basically tells you how to install the power supply, how to remove the power supply, a few mentions about the wattages and everything, which is on the back, and then it does have a wiring diagram, if I can find it. It does have a wiring diagram, and by that I mean it tells you what the cables are, but again it doesn't tell you how many of each of the cables that you've got. So if we remove the first of the polystyrene there, we get the first glimpse of the power supply. We've got a box full of cables here, which I'll show you in a minute. I will talk to you about the power supply cable though, because it's actually quite a high quality. If you have a look, it's like a metal braided, and then it's got like a PVC stroke kind of plastic coating over the top. This reminds me of days gone by of old PCP power supplies and Enemax power supplies that always used to come with these cables, and they don't so much anymore. I actually really like them. I've always wished that someone would be brave and make the internal cables braided with this stuff. I know it would probably cost a little bit more, but not being funny, if you have a look at that braid there with the colouring, can you imagine your power supply all braided with that, and then using an Acer Sabertooth with, for argument's sake, the Corsair C70? I think it would be an awesome military themed mod. Or build, whatever you want to say. But yeah, it's never going to happen, but it's always something that I've thought about. So, lovely main power cable. But let's have a look at the power supply itself. If I move the box out the way. Obviously we've got the other bits up here. I can see them on the edge of the camera. It's going to drive me nuts. So I'll move those out the way quickly. So, looking at the power supply itself, 120 centimeter fan in the middle, and then we've got that Silverpower kind of gorilla logo in the middle. Black powder coated, I'll say satin. It's a texture satin coating as well, with a silver kind of grille. Have to say the two different colours, if they just made that grille black, I think it would have made it look a lot nicer. The really basic silver grille, it stands out to the point where it does make it kind of look cheap. Not necessarily a bad thing if you're going to be running it in your case upside down, or upside down, that way up anyway, so the fan's underneath sucking air from the outside. But I'm the type of person that I actually like my fan grills pointing up. I always have been. It doesn't matter which way round you put them before people start saying you've got to have them sucking cold air in, because they don't really get massively hot, although we'll talk about performance a little bit later on in the conclusion and the kind of wrap up. But anyway, if you do have it in your rig, how I would say, with the fan grill up, you won't see a sticker at all, so it keeps it quite understated, which will be nice. If you do have it face down, so it's sucking air in from the outside, then you are going to get this Silverpower sticker on the side, so you're going to be able to see the monkey or the gorilla or whatever you want to call it. If we have a look around the back, normal kind of hexagon mesh around the back there. It says 110 to 240 VAC, kind of normal layout. Normal kind of basic power switch. It's nice click to the switch, doesn't necessarily feel too cheap. But as far as the outside is concerned, that's really about it. If we have a look, we've got the main bulk of cables, which I'm going to undo this because just so that I can show you. The cables that come out of the power supply that are fixed, I will get this clip undone. There we go. Right, the power cables that come out of the power supply that are fixed are obviously a 24-pin power cable, which we would expect. Then you've also got a 4+4-pin CPU 12 volt, which is obviously the one that goes at the top of your motherboard. And then we've also got a double 6+2-pin PCI Express. Now these double ones can be quite handy because what you've got to bear in mind is if you've got a graphics card that's got two PCI Expresses on it anyway, you're not going to be kind of running any monstrous overclocks, although to be perfectly honest I wouldn't really be worried anyway, especially not nowadays. You can run this up and run both of them, so it means you've got less cables coming out of the power supply, which means you can keep things tidier. If you're worried about using these fittings, because I do get quite a lot of messages from people saying, are these safe to use? All I would say is work it out for yourself, because obviously at the end of the day it really comes down to the amount of power that your power supply is able to deliver. So give it a try. Plug them both in from this one, see how you go, overclock it, see how you get on. Then just try the extra cable, plug it into your power supply, and then run your tests again. Try overclocking again. See if it makes a difference. I very much doubt that it will. But then, this is one of the things I've always tried to say to you guys, is just kind of give it a bit of thought. A lot of the questions I get asked, you can work them out yourself if you can be bothered to put a bit of time in rather than just going, and if you send me a question, you might not get it answered for like 12 hours a day. By that time, you could have spent 12 minutes, 24 minutes, working it out yourself and actually worked with your rig and learnt something about your rig, which it does help over time. It's just about kind of working it out. Maybe my head works differently, I don't know. But anyway, that's my thoughts on these cables. I quite like them because you can make things tidy, and I certainly have used them in builds in the past. I'm getting flashbacks from one of the competition rigs that we did, had one of these cables and I used them and it was lovely. Right, onto this is the modular part down the bottom. Obviously it's semi-modular, not fully modular. But down the bottom we've got two PCI Express stroke CPUs. So we've got two more PCI Express cables that we can plug in there if we want, or an extra CPU cable should we want. We'll talk about cables that are in the bag in a minute. And then we've got 4 peripheral stroke IDE SATA. So it's kind of your Molex and your SATA cabling down there. But what we'll do now, we've looked at the outside, we'll take a look at the cables itself. And we're just going to put the power supply out the way, but not completely out of sight. And we'll take a look at the cables, because we've got the Silverpower bag. So we pull all the cables out. Now I'm going to separate these out just so that I can get my head around what there is, so that we can talk about them a little better. Right, so that one, Molex, floppy, SATA, SATA. Right, so we'll work through these slowly. We have one power cable to go up with an extra CPU 8-pin, should you need it. So move that to one side. Then we've got another cable which is PCI Express, and it's another dual PCI Express as well. So it's one cable into the power supply up, and then you've got the 2 possible PCI Expresses at the top, and they're both 6+2 pin. Then we have one connector for Molex with 2 Molex cables on it. So one connector, 2 Molex cables. Then we've got another one which is 1 connector and 3 Molex cables, so a total of 5 Molexes altogether. Then we have a It's Molex to 2 floppy drives. Now you may think to yourself, why do I need a floppy drive connector? Well, just for instance, straight off the top of my head, I've got an Asus Sonar D2X in the rig that I use daily. That needs a floppy power connector to power it. So these things do still get used. Maybe not quite so often anymore, but they are there. Now, there's quite a lot of SATA connectors here. So we've got one connector with 1, 2, 3 SATAs on it. We've got another connector with 2 SATAs on it. And then we've got another connector again with 3 more SATAs on it. Now that might sound quite strange to you that they're not all the same, but for argument's sake, if you've got a storage drive and a solid state drive, you can just use the 2, keeps your cabling down. Or say for argument's sake, even again, if you've got a SATA cable, sorry, if you've got a solid state drive, a storage drive, but you may be adding in something later on, you can even wire it up so you've still got a spare. So that's that. One thing we do need to talk about is the braid though, which is why I kept the power supply here and we'll pull the power supply back in. The braid, the thing is nowadays, it's getting quite difficult with me to keep talking about this. I'm going to bring the camera in and hopefully we can talk about this a bit better. But it's with the braid nowadays, it doesn't feel like a cheap braid, but it doesn't necessarily feel like an amazing quality one either. But the trouble is as you can see the coloured cables underneath. Now this is brilliant if you're going to be individually braiding your cables, because obviously you want to know what cable's which. But if you're just going to be chucking it in your system, it would be really nice just to have black cables, which is one of the reasons why I do quite favour some of the units out there that all the cables are bunched together black like a set of fingers, and they're kind of like that. But even the braided ones, some of them, one of the PCI Expresses is braided, one of the 24 pins braided, but the cables inside are still black, and it just helps keep that colouring down and give it a little bit more of a quality feel. So the braiding's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. If you give it a bit of a pull, I'll pull the camera back out again so you can see. If you give the cabling a bit of a pull, you can normally get pull the braid in a little bit better. It's not going to win any awards for being amazing, but it's certainly not going to be getting marked down, as I have quite a lot of units, for being horrific. The other cabling, like the CPU, again you can see the cable colour through it, but it's not massively bad. I think if you're going to be looking at buying this system in the first place, you're not going to be looking at buying something that's going to be amazing aesthetics anyway. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the actual technical side of the testing, and then we're going to kind of morph that all into the conclusion. So yes, stay tuned. Right then guys, moving on to the conclusion for the Silverpower SP-S850M. Now, this is the point where I'm going to direct you to the main review on Overclock 3D, where James has done all the technical testing. I've obviously just been doing kind of aesthetics and my overview of the unit for the video, but I'm going to be now kind of like drawing from the results and the review that he's put together on the main website to give you the final kind of conclusion. So it's kind of like a two-man kind of affair here. Now, the unit itself, there's a couple of things that we really need to talk about before we go on to like the aesthetics on my side. So we'll do the technical side first, but price, it's going to be around the £100 mark. I've seen prices online, one was 99, one was 101. Now, that's off to a good start. To put it into context, Corsair AX 850 watts set you back about 240 quid, so it's less than half the price. So are you getting less than half the performance? Now, this is kind of a strange one really, because we would expect to say yes, but this is why it's a strange one. We can say no, it's not less than half the performance, far from it. Now obviously we've got a proper power supply tester and an oscilloscope and a hot box and all kinds of stuff, so it's not the fact that we're shoving voltage meters, kind of like multimeters, into power supplies to see how it's performing. We're far more advanced than any retards that do that. But basically, the actual loading of the unit itself, we can put up to, I think we're at the moment, we're at 1800 watts that we can put through any unit before we need to go on to our secondary tester. And if we go onto the secondary tester, then we can go up to 3000 watts. So it's a dual stating. But anyway, with this unit, 983 watts you can run this unit at, and it will stay at that period, at that wattage being drawn through it, and it completely stays within ATX specs. So it's actually a very strong unit, and when I say within ATX specs, I mean it's not on the limits of the unit. You can actually push it further than that. It was around kind of 1050 watts that it was starting to shut itself off, and at 1050 watts it shut itself off. You unplug it from the unit, leave it 5 minutes, plug it back in again, it'll work absolutely fine. So it's a very, very capable unit. When, like I said, you can run it all day, every day at 983 watts and not have a single problem with it. Now it's rated at bronze rating, which is an efficiency rating. So we've obviously tested that. And it's not bronze efficiency rating. You'd think that would be a negative point, wouldn't you? But it's not, because it goes beyond silver. It would actually pass a gold efficiency rating if we were rating this as a gold power supply. It sits absolutely on the line, perfect for gold efficiency, yet it's boxed and sold, as I've shown you earlier, as a bronze unit. So absolutely brilliant. Now, one of the crucial things that we test with power supplies, and it's something that a lot of other sites don't even touch at all, is voltage suppression, or the ripple. Now we have to test this with an oscilloscope, and basically the voltage ripple is how much the voltage basically goes up and down. I'm trying to keep it kind of roughly basic, but it's basically how much the voltage goes up and down in a millisecond. Now, this may not sound like too much of a problem for you guys, but it's that voltage ripple that can kill. And we have had power supplies before that have been so bad, we've hooked them up to old kit to see how long old kits lasted. Now, it's not kind of, you might think, oh, he's testing it on old kit, but it doesn't matter. But we have had units in the past that have literally taken a kit out within a day because the voltage has been so horrific. But anyway, talking about this, I like the way that James put it in the main review actually. This is, you almost need a defibrillator because it flatlines. And by flatlines, I mean there is hardly, and in some cases, no voltage ripple at all. The voltage suppression on this unit is amazing. Like, we've seen power supplies over twice the price of this perform worse. This unit for that in itself is brilliant. It was so good that James thought the oscilloscope was broke, so he got another power supply out to test it, to test the second unit, and lo and behold, we were back to where we would expect it to be. So the voltage suppression on this is brilliant. So to recap, it's rated at bronze rating, but it would pass the gold efficiency rating. 850 watts without a problem. It will actually do 983 watts and still stay within ATX spec. And also the voltage suppression on it is kind of second to none. The only bad thing that we found with it was when running at full load, 850 watts, obviously we pushed it beyond, but at 850 watts, pulling a solid 850 watts from the wall, the fan in it does actually get quite noisy. We can hear it over the power supply tester, which that in itself is quite an achievement to show how loud the fan is in this. So unless you've got a monster rig, I mean, you don't really, very seldomly are you actually going to be pulling 850 watts from the wall anyway, but it's not necessarily going to be the quietest unit in the world. So my thoughts on it, the aesthetic side of it, it's obviously going to be quite bland, isn't it? I've already said to you about that chrome grille. Just changing that chrome grille to black would make it look a little bit more stealthy, and I think, the stealthy kind of look might not necessarily be a bad thing with it. This, for many of you out there, you could literally get on eBay or wherever, get yourself a normal 120mm black grille, swap this grille out with the screws. As long as you're careful with the screws, they won't notice, because if you have to RMA it, which, anyone can do at any point in time, so there's never a 100% success rating, you could put it back, but you just have to make sure you go real careful with the screws. But you could change that and have a black grille if you're going to have it faced up. Also, if you're going to have it faced up, as I normally do, with a grill up, and you have that black grille on it, you're not going to have the black, you're not going to have the sticker. So you could end up with quite a stealthy looking power supply. So in that respect, it's pretty good. Cables, we'll say are average. They're not going to amaze you, but at the same time, I don't really think they're going to disappoint you either. And considering the price of this unit, it's really not something I'm going to mark it down on. The box was cheap, but let's face it, as soon as you take it out of the box, you're really not going to kind of care about it. The only real gripe I've got with it, as I said, is the that grille. And if you do have it face down, which I know a lot of you will do, and have the power supply facing down so it's drawing cold air in from outside, you are going to have to look at that monkey, or the gorilla, whatever you want to call it. And that's probably another thing that does kind of, it makes me think it kind of cheapens it a bit, the fact that they've got a gorilla kind of shouting on the side. It almost looks like it's trying to eat the barcode. But other than that, it's a great unit, to the point where we didn't know which way to swing with it. Because our gold rating, when we give out a gold award, a lot of people think it's got to be perfect. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like absolutely perfect, because obviously we're not going to say that the braid on this is perfect, but for 100 quid, could you have asked for much more? No, not really. But the way we're going to swing with it is we are going to say that we're going to give the Silverpower SP-S850M the OC 3D Gold Award, just because of the price, also the fact that it not only exceeds the bronze rating, it goes on to score gold, and the fact that it will run over its over spec and still stay within, basically at 983 watts, it was still at bronze efficiency rating. So you can run this thing over spec, and it'd be one of those things where if you're looking to get maybe a temporary power supply, or maybe a cheap power supply for a bench rig or something like that, this would be absolutely perfect for it. So yeah, that's why we gave it gold, basically, because it did surprise us. We were not expecting the results, especially that ripple result, to be so good for a unit that's just 100 quid. This is probably one of the best power supply bargains on the market at the moment. So if you can get past that point where it's all about aesthetics and just get down to the performance, these are brilliant, or this will be brilliant. So for those of you out there that are kind of the people that are just fit your rig, shut the door, don't necessarily think about window, and you just want it to work, could be absolutely perfect for you. Those of you out there that are going to be thinking about braiding and you know, everything looking prim and proper, that type of thing, it may be the point in your rig where, you know, this will stand out as being the kind of budget end of it for you. But you kind of do have to kind of weigh up that the pluses and minuses. And as I said, if you're building a kind of stealthy system, whiz that grill off and make it a black grill, and you'd be on to a winner. So we're going to leave that there. I'm going to grab my remote. We're going to leave that there. This is Tiny Tom Logan with the gold award-winning Silverpower 850 watt power supply. Out.